in the future, we'd really like to see an east-west service on Route 4. I think that's, down the road a little bit. We're going to need to find some more transit funding, but there's a lot of people who work in Concord who drive Route 4 every single day, and we can see that being a big use and maybe a meeting spot there for people coming down 125 who are going to Concord. So.
Or Manchester.
Or Manchester, yeah.
Manchester.
Yeah. So we see a lot of potential for this spot. We'd love for Hampshire DOT to take over pretty soon. I don't know how much more information I can provide the landowner myself. That, and I wouldn't want to be speaking for DOT and making assumptions about how much funding they have and what they're willing to do to work with the landowner. So it's the next step.
Do we even have a clue as to what 30 parking spots relieves? It seems to me with a lot of expenses starting out for just 30 spots. I would think there would be a lot more demand out there.
I think
one construction project might be cheaper than 2 a year apart.
That's the sentiment that we communicated to New Hampshire DOT. We thought that 30 to 50 spots was maybe a quarter of what would actually be needed at the area. Right?
Well, this is part of the recorded decision for the Little Bay Bridge project, and we took exception to the models that DOT, or I shouldn't say DOT, their consultant used to estimate demand for public transit and for alternatives. It's grossly out of date, and quite honestly, should not be used anymore. And that was our written testimony on the EIS components. So I agree with you. I don't think we should be building a 30 space lot here. I think we should be building the lot to the maximum capacity that can fit the property. Yeah. This is what we've run into multiple times now with park and ride lots in the state that we've chosen to invest in, and we immediately run into capacity issues.
The example of that is in Dover, the exit 9 that was scheduled to be from another record of decision. I believe it was like 185 to 200 something spots, and now it's 485 spops, and it's full every single day. So, I think the Seacoast region gets it about what the benefit of a park and ride. We drive on congested roads. We have a transit system that we are beginning to understand at least have the value in it. And I really think there's going to need to be some convincing to DOT that there's really a greater demand than they're anticipating in this spot. So I guess to finish up with this, I sent an email off to DOT with the results, answered as many of the questions they had that I could, and we're waiting to hear back from them now, and pretty excited about getting things going. The landowner has heard, or has had a number of developers stop by recently, according to him, talking about this land, and they're starting to see financing free up a little bit to actually develop the land. And we've noticed this kind of throughout the region. There's a lot more commercial development going on now than there has been for the last few years, and it seems like things are starting to pick up again. So this is really the right time to start working on this.
Yeah, I got a quick one. Is there any other land around the Lee traffic circle other than what you call Candyland or
the Sugar
Shack or whatever it is? Besides that, down the road a little bit, is there anything immediately off the Lee traffic circle that could possibly be utilized as park and ride with acreage?
We've looked into pretty much all the pieces of land that are close by, and the biggest issue is really wetlands. It's really wet around there, and I don't know.
Flooding.
I don't know. We can see
Actually, across Route 4.
Just see a small portion. This is the Oyster River, which is now protected river, recently a protected river. So there's additional restrictions to building in these areas because we have a lot of wetlands around here. This town is really wet, and we're built out at this intersection pretty close to what the capacity is with all the wetlands around. So
Yeah.
Most of the other lots, that I think DOT kind of has scanned around, but I don't know how much effort they've put into finding other ones, because a lot of the spaces are now, that would be okay for building or getting pretty far away from the traffic circle, and they wouldn't be conducive to having a transit line using that park and ride lot. And I think that's a big barrier. So I want to make it a multimodal, or I guess multi-use park and ride lot, and not just have a place to park cars.
There's nothing available on the southwest side of the circle?
On the southwest side, there was, they look over here,
Yeah.
there was an area, again, the Sugar Shack, they wanted to build in the road front, or in the area with road frontage, they're building, I think, a Rite Aid or something. And so the park and ride lot was going to be behind it, but there's some issues. The entrance wasn't going to be signalized, so it causes some safety issues, especially for transit. And then the other issue with that, what I understand, is every time a transit route came down, they would have to go through the circle twice. This would add a ton of time to the routes, and you're making everybody go through the circle just to get to the park and ride. The nice thing about this is you're pulling traffic off these roads before they get to the circle, so we have enough congestion issues on this circle that we don't need to
Okay.
increase it too much. Yeah.
Well, in regards to that, with the access just before the Lee traffic circle, right down, would that be signalized?
No, and see, now this would be entrance only, so you wouldn't be able to get out this way, because they wouldn't want people taking left turns onto Route 4 out of here. It wouldn't be safe. So what would happen up here is you need to pick up and then loop back around and go out to this signalized intersection, which would definitely be possible. That would, it wouldn't be a huge
Down
issue.
below again,
Yep.
coming off the Lee traffic circle from west to east,
Yep.
would you be able to access that road coming around there,
You would,
from there? Yeah.
I don't know if you're allowed to come in this way, or you'd have to go around and then up and into it this way. It would, it would need to have the appropriate signage on the road so that people would understand what they're doing. But it's also going to be turned into the two-lane roundabout coming up pretty soon, and it's going to need some pretty significant signage so that people understand how to use the two-lane roundabout anyway. It's going to take a little time.
I think the two-lane, when they do the changes to the roundabout, it impacts that driveway for the access road to the point that it's an in-only, if I remember correctly.
Alrighty. So that's the park and ride. That's exciting. We're hoping to get that going.
Any news on the roundabout reconstruction?
I haven't heard anything for a little while about that. I know that the project was in final design. There were
Is that HSIP?
yep, highway safety. I know highway safety is backlogged at this point pretty significantly, but I think this is one of the top projects. I believe the goal was to construct the project in 2013. I don't know if it's on schedule anymore. I just really haven't heard much about the project, and it's not broken out in the Transportation Improvement Program or the STIP at this point either.
Yeah,
So
it's
tough to tell.
It's one of the programmatic projects being considered. I don't know if we made a decision going forward yet. We're still waiting for the funding from Federal Highway, because if we lose that 30% and then another 50%, I'm not sure what project's going to make it.
I coach with the police chief. He asks me every time I run into him, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that question every time I see Laurel or chat around. So. I guess moving on to another topic, access management in the region. It's been another kind of hot topic for us anyway here, and it's becoming a little bit of an issue in Barrington now. This past fall, I went to a traffic scoping meeting for a new development on 125, just north of the 125 Route 9 intersection. So there's a little Caliph store, not the bigger general store, but the small one, and just beyond that, they're planning a Dunkin' Donuts gas station moving in with 2 access points. It's probably within 100 yards of the intersection there, which is terrible intersection anyway, really high levels of traffic at peak hours. And, you know, at the traffic scoping meeting in the fall, definitely brought up concerns. District 6, Kevin Russell from District 6 was bringing up some concerns about these access points. And so just last week, we got an email from Connie Broders from Barrington, the planner. She had received a number of letters from her safety staff in the community, and they have some serious concerns now about the access points and how dangerous it would be to allow people to take left turns out of that, out of those driveways, especially in the morning when you have, you know, traffic backed up a half mile already at the intersection.
Sorry, I missed the exact location?
It's on 125.
Right.
If you're heading north, it's on the right-hand side of the road, and I guess it's between. There's the Caliph's meat store, so like there's smaller
Fine
store.
food, they call it the George Caliph's Fine Foods. Or
Excuse me?
Yeah.
George Caliph's Fine Foods, I
I-
know. I get my hands in turkey.
Where George's little store is?
Yeah, right there.
Right on that
Just,
corner.
Yeah.
just beyond that.
So
Okay.
yeah, the next lot down, it would be abutting that.
Oh, is that a church there or something?
And beyond
It's
that,
in between
medical
the
professional
church
office, that's what my
and,
dentist is.
There's a
And
little
the,
white house there.
Okay, okay.
We don't need
Yeah,
any more trucks
okay.
on
Yeah.
either.
So this is, you know, we've been trying to work with Barrington and some other communities. I guess we haven't put enough, you know, emphasis on the importance of access management on these primary commute routes. But this has really, I guess, sparked the thought process in Barrington to really start looking into this again. And Barrington currently, they have a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with District 6 about access management. So any access point that's created on 125 or Route 9, I believe, they have standards for communication. Unfortunately, there's no standards or no stricter standards for actually granting access permits to developers. So the MOU is in name only. It's really just a communication agreement rather than having any standards tied to it. So Barrington really started thinking about, well, maybe we need some standards tied to this in our zoning or in our site plan regulations so that we can have a little more control and ensure that, you know, our safety standards are met, especially I think that's zoned as their village center right there. So we're going to be sitting down hopefully next week with Barrington officials and Kevin Russell from District 6 to talk about access management. And I guess going along with that, one of our new staff members, Greg, has been working on doing a GIS layer of all the access points on primary commute corridors. So we've designated a number of corridors, Route 108, Route 125, Route 11, Route 9, 202, and 4, I believe, at this point, as our primary, you know, regional commute corridors. So what we're having Greg do is go through on a GIS like this and basically put a point any place there's an access point on one of these major roads, and also do measurements on ones like this that are, you know, 200-foot long access point. These are, you know, we need these data points to help us do a better job planning. I think we're gonna, you know, compare it to crash data, and I'm guessing we're probably gonna see some type of correlation between our crash data and the number of access points and the frequency of access points on these commute routes. We're also going to be doing some probe runs with a vehicle to try to start understanding our free flow times on these commute routes versus our peak hour delays that we're experiencing on these routes, and then also compare them to access points. So one of our big, you know, initiatives in the next few years, I think, is going to be to protect these corridors by setting up some kind of standards with communities, making some agreements with communities to try to strike the right balance between, you know, businesses being successful, but people also being safe on these roads. And I think this is a big issue.
as you know, it's an issue for Northwood, and we have an MOU with DOT, but it's even less, has even less teeth, I think, than the one in Barrington. So
Yep.
I would really appreciate it if, as part of your efforts, you could sort of get in touch with the planner and work with that, what you're doing.
Yep, absolutely. I think one of our goals is to try to get a regional, recommendations for the whole region, and communities can decide themselves whether they want to adopt them or not, or strike up that agreement. But I think it's pretty important, and we also have congestion issues, and we have capacity issues on a lot of these roads. And something that we all recognize is we don't have any money to keep building more capacity. It's expensive, it costs a lot of money to maintain, and we need to do a better job of recognizing the roads that we want to stay, keep safe and keep open for commuting, and the roads that are the strategies we want to use to allow businesses to be successful. So we need to find that balance, and we're gonna be working towards that in the next few years. But
Mark, the 125 corridor study had a lot of recommendations in it relative to this.
yep.
How does that interrelate?
Well, that's really that's the best way for us to set those standards, is do the corridor study, understand the, anticipated build out over the next 10 years or however many years, and come up with standards. We've had 2 of the 3 phases of the corridor study for 125 completed, and it's a really great study for the first 2 phases. One of the things that I think it lacks a little bit are the exact standards. So it talks about access management, how important it is, gives some suggestions, maybe you want to go with this strategy or this strategy, but it doesn't have any standards. It's not saying, keep driveways 500 feet apart if the speed limit is this speed limit. You need a signal here if, it doesn't set up any I guess, tight guidelines for the standards. So I think that's something we need to flush out and really come to an agreement upon what we think the right level of, I guess, control is for communities, and the right level of, I guess, flexibility is for people who want to develop on these roads.
So communities haven't been able to incorporate any of this in their
Yeah, I don't think we've
local
seen a lot
processes.
of the local regulations adopting any exact standards, because I don't know if the standards are drawn out clearly enough at this point in the corridor study. But that's usually like a great example in Rochester. There was a Route 11 corridor study done. They made an agreement with District 6 again, and an MOU for access management, and we were at a traffic scoping meeting, and I actually saw District 6 be able to say, no, we're not going to grant you that driveway permit, or we'll grant it to you temporarily, but we'll need, if we have more development up here, we're going to need to destroy that driveway, and we're going to just consolidate down to another access point. So that's the kind of thing we're looking for, and Rochester did a great job with this. The district did a great job, and I think it's working out pretty well. But that's kind of what we're looking for across the region. I think it's really important to recognize we can only build out so much and add so many access points before driving is impossible. It gets really tough to get to work, so we need to strike that balance at some point.
I'm just kind of curious, you were saying the development just in that picture that they're talking about, what's that going to do to traffic? Are they going to be forced to go out at the lights, or are they going to be allowed to take a left turn in that busy section?
Well, I think that the idea of this access road initially was that reason exactly. I know Wendy's was here before the Walgreens, but when the Walgreens was permitted, I think that they decided you need an access road, and ultimately I believe that new businesses are going to have to be accessed via the access road. And that's not to say that there's going to be no access points along 125, but I think they're going to be restricted a little bit more. I think that's the goal, so that you don't have, right here I can count 10 access points, give or take, and this is 300 or 400 feet from the circle. So we need to get that under control a little bit, so that we, people can drive safely to work and they can get to their services that they want. All right, moving ahead. Next topic, Tiger 4 grant round was announced by the federal government. Started preliminary applications on February 13th. I think they were due on the 20th, which is Monday, I believe. We reached out to Rochester to ask if we know that they have in their Granite State Business Park a TIF district established so that they can build an access road and a bridge over the North Coast rail line to open up the other side of the business park. They have some businesses in there that are being redeveloped. We had a plan for the Tiger 3 grant round to make improvements to the North Coast rail line, to hopefully make it, or the goal was to make it, I guess, prepare it for shipping more freight, I think is the goal. Bring it up to, the standards you would need to run more freight lines, run them at higher speeds, and have it be a little bit safer. At this point, primarily Ospey Aggregate is using the line for moving wash sand down to regions south of here. One of the goals from the initial grant was also to extend the line up to Conway, to the state-owned northern stretches of the rail, where they could then access, I think everywhere else in the country at that point, through either Canada or some other rail lines that they have connections with up there. I contacted Rochester about this. We heard back from Melody Esterberg about the investments. Turns out they're putting in about $5 million, I believe, it's all said and done, into the improvements over the rail line, which would be a great match for this grant. The grant would only have been for about $3.5 million, I think, to make the improvements to the rail line up to Ospey that were needed to really get the rail ready to move freight. Unfortunately, we couldn't, we really didn't have a long time frame to get in contact with the businesses who would use this or support this, so we weren't able to get the Hampshire DOT terribly interested because we didn't have enough information. This project in the Tiger 3 grant round came up 4th for New Hampshire DOT out of, 10 or 12, and they submitted 3 projects, so they were able to submit 3 projects. So this is a project, hopefully going forward we'll be able to do a little bit more with it. I think it's going to be valuable to the region. There's a lot of, I think there are a lot of businesses on the North Coast line that would use the rail if they had more access to it, if it was in a little bit better shape, and they could run more freight on the line. But at this point, it's pretty limited about what they can use the line for. Hopefully moving forward, we'll be able to do more with that. But
it's a $10 million minimum, though, for urbanized areas.
this is actually primarily rural. Anywhere north of, it's a 42-mile stretch of line, and north of about Center Milton is all rural. So
right.
we'll be able to apply for the rural grant. And the improvements have already been made from Rollinsford up through Somersworth. So there's only a section in, pretty short section, I think it was about 10 miles from Rochester to the middle of Milton that would be urbanized, and then the other about 30 miles would be rural, so we would go in as a rural application probably.
Okay.
But yeah, we're holding off for now on the grant because we're not quite there as far as getting the businesses engaged.
And Steve Pesci was working on putting a grant in for Tiger 3 too for UNH's South Road.
Oh, yep. Is he, now this is the Tiger 4 round, is he putting anything together for that round?
I do not know.
Okay. We also heard from Farmington about doing a complete streets downtown renovation and applying for the Tiger 4 round. I don't think they're quite prepared. Again, DOT or Federal Highways announced this, I don't know, maybe it was January 30th, and there was about a 20-day headway to get grants together. So it's really wasn't a lot of time. This is the kind of stuff we need to have it pretty much ready to go before the grant round is even announced. At this point, there's no funding in place for continuing the Tiger program, so we're hoping in the future there may be Tiger 5, Tiger 6, but and we think the competitive process is a pretty good process. I think it really helps the best projects float to the top. It's not quite as politicized, but at this point there aren't any more Tiger rounds that are funded, so this will be the last one for a little bit, unfortunately. Throw that out there. The last thing I had was we met again in Concord about Seacoast commuter options. I think there's a few more things to sort out, but it sounds like Coast is probably going to be the agency that takes the Seacoast commuter options program on. And I don't know if you'd like to talk about that a little bit, Brad.
Sure. We were approached by DOT in the fall to see if we had any interest in taking on the activities of what would be the Seacoast Transportation Management Association, and we had indicated that we would be willing to look at that under some conditions. One would be that we would want the funds to be transferred from FHWA to FTA. We're used to dealing with the FTA, not with the FHWA. That hurdle was cleared in that FTA does not have any issues with us running a program like that under their umbrella. The remaining challenge is that FHWA funds are not currently being transferred between one agency to another as a result of the ongoing saga of reauthorization. And there appears to be some movement there, but we have not seen anything solid. It's affecting projects in the region that Wildcat Transit's dealing with, so and may affect some that Coast is working with here in the not too distant future if there isn't movement on this. We wanted to make sure that all the project proponents in the past, the Pease Development Authority and the Planning Commission, were okay with Coast taking on this role, which both were. No other proponents or participants in the past in the Seacoast commuter options activities have expressed concern. Rather, they've expressed encouragement for us to take this on. We did ask that the budget be relooked. I think that was one of the hurdles all along, is that it wasn't enough. So we submitted a draft budget proposal to DOT in early February, along with a revised scope of work. And at our meeting February 8th or 9th, somewhere in there, there was no official, yep, that looks okay, we accept that, but the discussion moved right beyond to, okay, now that we've got numbers, how do we get years 4 and 5 funded? Years 1 through 3 will be funded by CMAQ, and those funds were awarded some time ago. So that's 80% of the project cost. 20% of the project cost will come from the Turnpike Authority. This is again one of the mitigation measures for Little Bay Bridge project. Under the EIS, however, it's mandated to be a 5-year project. Turnpikes will continue to fund 20% of the project cost in years 4 and 5, but we have not identified the remaining 80% of the funding. There is no reason why CMAQ funds could not continue to be used in years 4 and 5, because as a marketing effort, CMAQ, there's no restriction on the length of time marketing funds can be used under CMAQ. So that's realistically probably